Welcome to another writer's review, where today I'm going to be revisiting We Are Legion, We Are Bob, written by Dennis E. Taylor. Now, We Are Legion is the first installment in the Bobiverse series, which currently consists of 3 published titles. 2 more sequels are in the works, with the first one, Heaven's River, slated to release later this year in late September. Now, We Are Legion is a firm science fiction novel, and I'd best describe it as a mix between a survival story, something like The Martian, and a pure space exploration adventure story. The novel is narrated in its entirety in the first person's perspective and the past tense, and throughout the entire length of the novel follows the perspectives of several point-of-view characters, although the first quarter of the book is dedicated to only one of these. At the start of the novel, we get introduced to the main protagonist, Robert Johansen. He is a nerdy programmer who has just made millions after selling his Silicon Valley software company. With his newfound wealth, he goes out and buys the only reasonable thing, which is immortality itself. Well, technically, he hires the services of a company named Cryo-Eterna, who will freeze his body in the case of death, so he can be resurrected sometime in the future when medicine has advanced far enough. And mind you, these companies do actually exist in real life. Anyway, Robert ends up needing their services faster than expected when his forehead makes a close acquaintance with the windshield of a careless driver's car. When he wakes up about a century later in a strange laboratory, his life takes a significant left turn. The world he once knew is gone, his biological body is also gone, and Bob finds himself the property of a government-run organization which is grooming him for a secret project. The following chapters are then dedicated to this readjustment to his new way of life and being, and later on the novel transitions to the space exploration adventure story which I mentioned previously. Now, if we take a look at the novel's subgenre formula, you'll find that drama, world building, and action make up the largest percentage of the book. The drama consists of the usual bickering between the point of view and main characters that you'd expect from any novel. There is also a diplomacy and political intrigue subplot dedicated to one of the main point of view characters. Then we've got the world building, which is a given the adventure story nature of this novel. It mostly takes form in the descriptions of far-flung worlds and everything you might find on them. Then there's the action, which takes form in chapter-long action sequences, which take form of land combat, space combat, and even cyber combat. And these are usually preceded and centered around a quote from Sun Tzu's The Art of War. On the other hand, there's a couple of other elements which take up more of a supportive role, the first of which being comedy, which spices up the story here and there and prevents the novel feeling too serious. Then there's the historic element, where the novel follows the development of a fledgling civilization, and quite a few philosophical elements, where different point-of-view characters ask themselves questions about their new state of being and the state of the human civilization, and it's quite fun to follow along in their thought processes. Now, while some other elements don't appear in this very novel, that isn't to say they won't make an appearance later on in the series, the best examples of these being romance and suspense, which already make an appearance in For We Are Many, the very next installment in the series. In terms of other quirks I think you should be aware of, the book, while touching on some serious topics, manages not to take itself too seriously, and in my mind is still quite a leisurely read. And while it is fit for readers of every audience, I do believe that the novel is definitely geared towards the nerd and geek community, featuring many science fiction tropes and references to other book series and TV shows and movies. Now, one word of warning, because this novel does deal with an alternate future, where the United States of America has become a theocracy, the interactions between the leadership and the point of view characters is portrayed very stereotypically, and some people might find that offensive. I personally didn't find it too bothersome, but some reviews on Amazon do point it out, so reader discretion is advised. So in conclusion, We Are Legion, We Are Bob is available in ebook, paperback, audiobook, and a signed special edition hardcover copy. I personally really enjoyed the book when I first read it almost 4 years ago, and it's actually one of the first audiobooks that I ever listened to. Since then, I've reread it about 4 times already, as well as the whole series itself, and I'm very much looking forward to the 4th installment that's coming out in September of this year. So yeah, if you enjoyed what you heard in this review, I'd definitely suggest that you go out and pick up We Are Legion, We Are Bob. If my advice and opinion isn't good enough for you, I'll also have some general ratings up on screen now. The novel comes out at about 90,000 words in length, or 9 hours in length for the audiobook version. Now, if you're looking to save money, then I definitely suggest you pick up the ebook version, since it is the cheapest one by far, followed quickly by the paperback version. If it's the audiobook that you must get, then don't spend the $20-some or your Audible credits on the book, but instead make use of Amazon's WhisperSync deal, where you'll get both the ebook and audiobook versions for a total of about $9 or thereabouts, or just wait for one of Audible's 2-for-1 sales, since I have seen this book pop up in those every once in a while as well. Since the prices might have changed by the time you're watching this video, I'll also have an Amazon link down in the description below, so you can check out the newest prices. Well, that wraps up the spoiler-free section of this review. If you liked the video, consider liking it or sharing it with your friends. And now onto the writing lesson section, which features some pretty serious spoilers, so if you don't want to get spoiled, click off the video now. Now, the first thing I'd like to focus on is the Delton subplot, and how, in my mind, it's proof that not all the content in your novel needs to strictly follow the main genre that you've selected. Now, if you think about it, the Delton subplot is about as far from the futuristic sci-fi setting of the novel that you could get, and all in all, it really doesn't contribute all that much to the main plot of the series. Okay, sure, it does contribute a bit to Bob 1's character development, but the Earth situation or the Others threat later on in the series don't get affected by it whatsoever. So in that sense, if you're thinking about adding a subject that you're particularly passionate about into your novel, but maybe it doesn't fit the tone or subject really perfectly, you can still do it if you approach the whole thing with enough ingenuity. Secondly, I'd like to touch on the author's use of pre-chapter quotes, especially because of the large number of point-of-view characters featured in this novel, all of whom are in some sense very similar to each other, and in another sense have very different plot lines associated to each of them. Because a reader might become confused because of the constant switching between one to another Bob and what their plot lines might be, the author used these pre-chapter quotes to kind of set a tone as to what Bob we might expect from the coming chapter and what the general theme will be. The best example of this are Sun Tzu's quotes from The Art of War, because anytime you see them, you know for a fact that the coming chapter is going to have a combat-oriented theme. Now, the last thing I'd like to point out is the importance of Guppy as a dialogue partner and the importance of dialogue in storytelling in general. I first learned this lesson with my own writing when I isolated my main character behind a language barrier for a couple of chapters, much like the Bobs can be isolated in deep space. Without dialogue partners to bounce ideas off of, I soon found that all of the narration quickly divulged into direct exposition, which, sure enough, ruined the immersion of all of my readers. Now, I think that the same would have happened with this novel hadn't the author introduced Guppy as a dialogue partner basically as soon as Bob 1 left the solar system. Because from that point on, in my mind, The only other option to keep the novel readable would have been to turn it into a diary novel, kind of like Andy Weir did with The Martian. Well, that wraps up this writer's review. I hope that you enjoyed the video and found it informative and entertaining. If you did, consider liking the video, sharing it, and subscribing to the channel for more reviews such as this one. And I'll see you on the next writer's review.